What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel. This time we're going to be talking about what possible cards could be printed in the future of Pokemon Pocket to help solve some of the gameplay issues that we've been seeing. I did a whole video previously talking about some of the inherent game design issues, but this time instead of pointing out problems, I want to suggest solutions. And I picked out 5 cards that I think will help in deck building and solve some of the problems when it comes to the gameplay. So coming up with number 1 is Timer Ball. I think there needs to be a second ball card to help you search out for cards in your deck, specifically non-basic cards. I picked this one because I think this is just the most likely one they are to make. It kind of fits with everything they're trying to do with Pocket. But you flip 2 coins, and for each heads, you get to search your deck for an evolution Pokemon and put it in your hand. It would probably be at random, obviously. I don't think you'll actually search and pick something specific. But that 0, 1, or 2 does kind of feel like it's within the wheelhouse of what they would be doing. There is a couple of other card options for this kind of slot that I think also are applicable, like Capturing Aroma, which is flipping a coin. If heads, you get a evolution Pokemon. If tails, you get a basic Pokemon. I think a lot of that kind of stuff is fine. And I just think that there needs to be something to help you find your stage 2 Pokemon so you can complete an evolutionary line, because the ball search we have at the moment only gets basic ones. So decks that are only basic Pokemon are going to have a much greater advantage. And cards like you can see in the background, our Charizard is not going to be good because it's not going to be consistent enough to be able to keep up with stuff like Pikachu. However, things like Venusaur, which can recover really well, might be different. But another ball search one, I'm not super picky on how consistent or what it has to be. I just think it needs to help us get non-basic Pokemon. That's my number 1 wish. Next, we have Rare Candy. This is one that I talked about a little bit in that game design problem video. This is the same kind of thing, helping you get that stage 2 into play. Except I think perhaps this one would be better as a supporter. I think that's much more in line with the kind of power level that they're going for with this game. That said, as an item, it's still like just replacing one of the other cards that you'll be playing. Like, it just means that you're potentially playing 4 stage 1s and then you just kind of skip ahead a little bit perhaps. Like, I don't think it's so incredibly insane that it's going to make things like Charizard be crazy, because a lot of the stage 2 Pokemon have high energy cost to play anyway. So even if you got it into play straight away, it's not going to break the game in any crazy way. But it has the upside of you are able to get that Pokemon with a higher HP into play quicker, so the basic Pokemon is not going to get knocked out too soon before you have an opportunity to evolve things, which I think is kind of the advantage of the Rare Candy. And it's not like we have item search. You would just need to naturally draw it and kind of have all the pieces together to be able to get that turn in front, which I think is not that crazy. And as a supporter, making it remove your ability to research at the same time is not too broken. So I think Rare Candy is a fine inclusion here, because it'll just let you skip the stage 1, go straight to the stage 2, and then potentially try and keep up the tempo that way. But I did briefly touch on what I think also needs fixing, and Revive is my next choice. Revive number 3 of cards I think should be added, because what it does is it puts a basic Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench. This is perfect for, oh no, I had to lead my, let's say, Coughing, and it got knocked out before I drew Wheezing. And now when I play my second Coughing and I finally play my Wheezing and I Koga, I'm not going to have a Coughing on the bench to put the Wheezing onto directly. I know that's an incredibly niche example, but if I can't go and search and find the other basic thing to start that evolutionary chain, like if I had Routes, Curlier, Gardevoir all sitting pretty, all in my hand, I had to open the Routes and then they KO'd it and I put in my Mewtwo EX or whatever. I'm still holding Curlier, Gardevoir, praying for Pokeball, praying I can draw Routes. Revive, I don't even think it's something you'd play in your deck as a 2-off. It's probably just something you'd play as a 1-off in a slower deck. but there's currently no recovery cards. There's no Super Rod, Night Stretcher, any of that kind of stuff that we see in standard for the Pokemon TCG. There's nothing that lets you get back a Pokemon once it is gone. So especially for people that are not collection complete and you have like, oh no, I only have one Pikachu EX, but I still want to kind of play the deck. This is kind of like a cheeky way of getting around that, because you can go, oh, you knocked out my Pikachu EX, here's bonk, another one back, I'll retreat into it and I'll, keep trying to use it. So I think it's something, I don't think it has to be specifically revived. I just think, again, this is possibly the most likely one they are to print to match the power level of where Pokemon Pocket is at. But I think there needs to be some kind of Pokemon recovery, especially for basic Pokemon, to help if your evolutionary line has been disrupted. And then number 4. Now, I think this one is going to be slightly more controversial, but we have a bunch of items in the TCG that allow you to accelerate energy onto a benched Pokemon. One of the things that Misty does that I think is a little crazy is it lets you accelerate onto the active Pokemon. And so you're not even having to look for a retreat to actually get them back in there and get it happening. You just go, no, power him up and I'm going to attack. I think something like Energy Sticker, which on a successful coin flip will let you accelerate an energy onto one of your benched Pokemon, is not that crazy. You can only play 2 of this card in your deck. When you play it, you have a 50% chance of hitting. So realistically, those 2 cards equate to 1 additional energy attached, and it's to a benched Pokemon. I think this is like 1/5 as good as Misty. I don't think this could be a supporter. It would be unplayable. But I think the upside of it being in any color, possibly, or just like whatever the next available one off the pool is, could be pretty good. And I think that this would be a card that would help make stuff like Dragonite be a lot more playable. Because the problem is the amount of time that it takes to get Dragonite set up and then attach to the energy and then finally attack. If they knock out your Dragonite, you're just like, well, I'm GG, I guess. I don't do anything. But adding a few things that can slowly speed that up a little bit, like the rare candy, like the energy sticker, I think would go a long way to make more decks playable, which is kind of my goal here. Because in the next set, if they release another 200 cards, only 10 to 12 of them are going to be items and supporters. I think there's like 15 in the base set, right? So if we're on that same kind of number, we want to be enabling these new things. And if they're introducing all these, new Pokemon, it was like 200 new Pokemon, then it's going to have, obviously, I'm assuming, more Stage 2 Pokemon, more other things that are going to be needing to be built. And the same inherent problems that come from the base set are going to be there. And I think some of them will be solved by Energy Sticker. My only hesitation with Energy Sticker is that it could potentially be an auto include in every deck. There will be some decks like Weezing, for example, which I think if it needs 1 to attack is not going to care about energy acceleration, probably wouldn't use it. But most of the more I have to like donk all your guys kind of decks, I think will really want it, and could potentially just be an auto include. One of the things I think about a lot when it comes to designing a game, if there's no restrictions on what goes in your deck, for example, Hearthstone will say you can only play, if you're using this area, you can only play stuff from their pool. Magic the Gathering is like you can play whatever you want, but if you can't cast stuff because you don't have the right colors of the, of the mana to do it, that's pseudo restriction, right? And then sometimes cards come along and they say, I don't care, and then you can just be played in every deck, and I think that's very bad. We've had a few examples of Magic the Gathering where it's like this card just exists and has no drawback, you might as well just play it on everything. And I'm like, okay, that seems horrible. And then with Pokemon items and supporters, because there's no restriction to anything, like if you have a look, all of the supporters with the exception of Research are pretty specific. Like Brock, Misty, Blaine are all like specified Pokemon or types and stuff like that. Erica, all specified types. And I think it's much more likely that I continue to do things in that direction with maybe 1 draw supporter and then a few items. Only basing on the existing set, only 2 of them are any good, maybe 3 if you wanted to argue with me. And if we're using the same numbers, then we get a ball and we get an energy sticker and we get a draw supporter. And my suggestion for the draw supporter, my number 5 suggested card, is actually Judge. One of the problems we have at the moment is there's no way to get off a 0-card hand. In Pokemon TCG, there's many cards that say draw until you get to X. Pocket doesn't have that. Pocket just has Research, which draws you 2 cards. And you're like, I'm probably going to be playing them the turn that I draw them if I have no cards in hand. Or they're unplayable and they're stuck there because it's like an evolutionary that I don't have a basic for or whatever, right? But it still doesn't really increase your hand size that much. And we have the one opponent's hand size reduction one in red card, which I think is fine. But I think Judge is a better replacement. It's like a really common thing to do in Pokemon TCG is for both players to reset their hands according to rules. Like you have like Marnie, Iona, Judge, all in standard right now. And you're trying to make the player draw to 4 if the Judge is the last card in the hand. I think is like kind of my goal. But also like, oh man, I got no basics, I got no ball search, I got nothing. I just have like 100 stage 1s. If I hit the Judge, the chances of me drawing something playable is much higher than me sitting here with a dead hand. And I think that is more likely something I'm going to want than, because if they just go, oh no, here's a card that says draw 3 cards, you're like, why? You know, I can't play something that's going to be competing with Research. I think it's either going to be something that's like helping you find Pokemon or something more like Judge. It might be Judge but draws 3 cards instead of 4 cards, which I think would also be fine, but kind of eats into the territory of red card a little bit. Because the downside of Judge, if your opponent has no cards in hand either, you're getting them extra cards too. So I still think this, again, if they were going to make a second draw supporter, is the most likely choice. And a lot of this is kind of me reading and understanding the power level and the design briefs and stuff like that for the existing cards. And I think that they've intentionally depowered a lot of things from the Pokemon TCG so that it doesn't continue to creep at the same speed. Because the Pokemon TCG is like actually at a really high power level, and you can kind of tell this by looking at the number of 1-ofs in each deck. The amount of deck searching is like a lot in your turn compared to a lot of much older deck lists and a lot of other games where you're like, I have many 4-ofs of things because my ability to find them is lower, and so I need extra copies to make sure that I draw them when I need them. In Pokemon TCG, you will have maybe a 4-of your main attacking guy, and then like 3s, and then 1s. You have like 16 1-ofs in a lot of the deck lists we're seeing at the moment. Miraidon is a great example where they play like 2 of 2 Pokemon, just in case one's prized. If 2 are prized, oh well, whatever. And then have like 20 1-ofs of everything else. And Pocket is not in a state where it can do that because, you know, the pool just isn't wide enough. If you're going to play Pikachu EX with several 1-ofs, it would be 2 Pikachu EX and then like 5 basic Pokemon and then items, you know. But there isn't enough items beyond Ball and Research for you to be able to do something like that. So having something a bit more condensed, like the Judge, which is a little bit of disruption, but also a little bit of card draw, and then how you use it is kind of impactful, I think is much more likely to get printed. But I am curious as to what you are thinking. In the last video, we actually had a lot of really interesting discourse talking about what the core game design problems of Pocket that need to be improved going forward. I am curious to know what kind of cards, what kind of effects do you think need to show up in the game in the next set to help keep Pocket moving forwards in a positive direction. So get in the comment section, let me know. I am keen to hear about that one. But look, while you're there, all them good buttons, the like button, the subscribe button, they're just staring right at you. And you might as well click them, right? Just look, just click it.